This is an open letter about children. Uh, in many cultures with an old tradition of farming and also a tradition of excellence and seeking excellence, there are these festivals in which prizes are given at the end of every season. Every season, there's these festivals in which prizes are given to uh, farmers or growers who create the biggest pumpkin and the biggest carrot and the biggest uh, different kinds of vegetables. The biggest ones and the best ones and the best color and the best taste and the ones that are physically the biggest. So they give out these prizes to farmers for creating such a vegetables. Also, there are similar festivals celebrating farmers who or growers who produce, the biggest chickens and the biggest cows and the biggest sheep, and basically it's a celebration of doing a great job of creating something, you know, much better than everybody else. But this also serves another purpose, and that is once it's established that who has created an excellent product uh, based on, I guess, a lot of patience and quality control and patience and quality control, they have created an excellent product. Then the format which that farmer, that grower, has followed to raise a prize-winning chicken, that format is followed, is written down, is distributed. That's the purpose, basically, to get to write down exactly what steps have been taken for an excellent product to be produced, so the rest of the rest of the people in that society, the rest of participants, can have a better understanding of what steps to follow to create a better product. And usually, again, that usually doesn't happen because not everybody has the patience, not everybody has the skill to create exactly what the prize-winning farmers and prize-winning growers have achieved. So what it usually comes down to, is that the procedure that those excellent farmers, those prize-winning farmers and growers have adapted, those procedures get adapted by institutions that are in the business of growing food and growing chickens and animals for consumption and all of that. But so those institutions will keep to the letter of the procedures, and therefore are able to, you know, feed a lot of people just because they have, they're following the procedures set by those excellent farmers. Now, here's the thing, and based on patience and quality control and quality control and quality control and you know attending well to the crop, these institutions harvest the fruits of the labors of those specific farmers, which have, you know, come up with the procedure and the format to grow the biggest carrots and the biggest vegetables and the best animals for consumption. Here's the thing. if we understand that adopting the best practices, and by when we understand that institutions, by adopting the best practices, have been able to feed large numbers of people because of quality control and adopting the best practices and quality control and patience and quality control. If we are doing that for what we are consuming, why can't we do that with human children? I mean, look at it this way: we are producing our products are very well quality controlled, very well put together, very well raised and grown with patience and care, and the products that these humans are going to consume have been created with great care and great quality control. Meanwhile, the humans who are these products are meant for are growing up without any quality control, any real care in the hands of parents, which we already established, not everybody can be a good farmer, great farmer. Therefore, we already understand that not everybody can be a great parent. Everybody is good at something, but not everybody is good. Therefore, not everybody is good at being a good parent. So this whole idea that okay, we leave parenthood and raising of the children to a bunch of amateurs, who many of whom didn't actually want to be parents, some of whom, although wanted to be parents, don't have a didn't and still don't have a clue of how to be a good one. Some of them don't really want to be a good parent. Some of them don't have the patience, don't have the knowledge. Some don't have the knowledge, some don't have the care, some don't have the mental capacity, some don't have the wisdom, some don't have. It takes a lot, just like it takes a lot of patience and care and wisdom and knowledge to raise the fucking good carrot. It takes a lot, relatively, it takes a lot more patience and wisdom and knowledge and care to raise a good human being. So raising a human being to parents, which you can compare to amateur farmers, it's crazy. Here we are producing all these great products for the consumption of less than optimum human being. I mean, I guess here's what I'm saying. You can have, we have one Shaquille O'Neal, but with quality control and care in raising human beings, if it was adapted until now, we would have thousands upon thousands of Shaquille O'Neals, or Michael Jordans, or Steve Jobs, or Elon Musk, or it's with the proper care and patience, proper care, adapting the right practices in raising children, you can have, very, optimum human being. But because we are leaving it out to a bunch of amateurs, we are leaving, although we are taking, we are taking the farms, giving these great big farms to big institutions to adopt, to adopt the best practices and keep quality control and do this and do that and do the other, in order to, create the best product, the best carrots. Again, we are leaving human beings to a bunch of amateur parents and hoping hoping it works well, it works out well, and hoping that they raise good human beings, which, as we already know, very few can. And so what's the point when Mr. Elon Musk says, let's have more people? Let's have more what? More crap? Or I'm all for let's have more human beings, but let's have more human beings that are quality controlled in their raising process, in their growth process. They are given proper care and attention and resources, just like a fucking carrot. So at the end of the day, just like you get a good carrot after you give it proper attention, follow a proper format in raising it, you also following this proper format and giving it enough attention and resources, you at the end of the day you get a great human being. But just let's have more. Let's have more shit. For what purpose? You're opening up a fertilizer factory for all this human scum? And when you another thing to consider is the cost of raising a proper human being. This as we cost of everything is rising as it is because of resources dwindle, as the resources of planet Earth dwindle and have to be distributed between a larger number of people. Because of the dwindling resources, there's going to be increasing cost. And as the increasing cost of everything takes place, raising of the children becomes more expensive. To raise a proper human being is very expensive, and that is often out of the reach of an average Joe and Jane. So that's another reason for allowing institutions to raise children from the very early age, from the very young age, from early on. Because then institution, we can leave the institution expenses as a responsibility of the government, just like army is the responsibility of government. You have raising of the children as a institution, as a ministry, as a secretarial position, to raise children, not just education, just in general raising children. Here we go, we produce the child at the age 6, at the age 5, we give the child to the institution, and from then on the institution has the responsibility of raising the kid and educating the kid. And once a week or once a month, the parents may or may not have the right to see their children, because it's not really their children. These are society's children. These are society's members, which at one point in the future they have to be well adjusted in order to be positive force for the society. Unless you're very well adjusted, you can't be a positive force for the society. And allowing parents with little knowledge and little wisdom and little patience to raise generation after generation of shit doesn't help the society. Again, cost is another factor that we should move towards, letting society institutions take care of children instead of families. Further on, I mean, if you imagine that another benefit of giving the child to a society and have society raise the child in a mixed bag. See how, look at how positive that could, look at how positive it would be that if you know your child is in an institution in your city, in your town, you know your child along with other children is in an institution, but you cannot pick your own child between them. You know they're in there. You know your children and your neighbor's children and your cousin's children, they're all in the same institution, in the same city, in the same town. You know they're there, part of that institution, getting educated, getting raised, getting trained to be, positive members of society. But imagine that it's nameless. You can't pick your own child from between the whole system of children, the bunch of children that are being looked after in that institution. I think that's the ideal situation, because then you don't just love your child, then you have to love all of the children there. This whole idea of that, oh, I love my child but fuck your child, this whole idea will go away. It's sort of like, your child is part of that institution, but you can't pick your child out because it's all nameless. It has become nameless. So the result is that you just love all the children that are in that institution. You hope well for all the children that are being raised in that institution or other institution, the whole country's institution, the whole planet's institutions. You hope all the children do well because you have a child in there, or 2 or 3 or 5 or 20, but you don't know where they are, and you cannot track them. So any child from that institution can be considered your child. Now, see, what's the positive of it? The positive of it is that, politicians, imagine a politician or an arms manufacturer who cannot pick his own child from any other child in these institutions that are every city has them, every town has them, the whole country has them. No parent is raising their own children. They all go to well supervised institutions. The result is no politician, no arms manufacturer will ever go to war unless it's absolutely necessary, because they are not sure whether their children might be on the front line. Their own genetic information, their own DNA might end up in the front line of that fight and might be the first casualty of that fight. So they are basically, their hands are tied by mixing everybody's children, in these institutions. You tie the ruler's hands up. So we know the ruler, the arms manufacturer, the general, the top brass of the military, the top arms manufacturers, the top politicians, none of them will go to war if their hands are tied, because their own flesh and blood is being looked after in these institutions, and they cannot track them, and there's a chance that their own flesh and blood may be lost in a war that they participate in. Now, if you do this planet-wide, you can stop all the wars tomorrow. I mean, not tomorrow, because, the children of these politicians have to go into this institution, get mixed in the bunch, lose track, and wait until these children reach the age of 18, 19, 20, the age that the politician, the arms manufacturer, the top brass of the army knows their child might we end up in the front line of the war. So they will not go to war. You will stop seeing wars. Because to a politician, just like to a parent, every child that is in that institution can be their own child, and every parent, every member of society loves the children that are in those institutions because any of them could be their own child. Just like that, every politician, every arms manufacturer, every top brass of the military thinks that they have to love every member of that comes out of those institutions and joins the society or is living in those institutions. And you can be sure, this is how you make sure that the quality control is going to be really top notch in those institutions. Exactly by mixing the children, by making every child seem like an orphan, and you make sure that the politician who knows his child is going to be could be in any one of these institutions that he's in charge of, his brother's child, his sister's child, his superior's child, and his inferior's child could be in any of these institutions. Just a mixed bag. They cannot identify their own children in these institutions. Therefore, you can be sure they will take the best care they can in every institution, because they want the best for their own children. And once you mix their children with other people's children and you don't allow them to keep track, they do their best to make every institution that is involved in raising children to be the best, because people in the high ranks, they don't want their own children to be abused, they don't want their own children to be killed, they don't want their own children to suffer. So they make sure of the optimum quality of every one of these institutions. And this is for a few of you who may think that, oh no, if you leave it to the government is going to fuck it up and our children are going to suffer in these institutions and this and that. And I would tell you that there's evidence of it. The children of Native Americans which were sent to institutions that were organized by the pink-skinned Europeans, all the red-skinned children were abused, and many of them raped and many of them killed and what blah blah blah. But imagine this, that if the pink-skinned children were also part of the same institutions, and imagine if everyone from the sheriff to the president to the senator to the representative to the mayor, if every one of their children was also by law supposed to be go to these institutions at age 5 and return back to the society as a well-adjusted individual at age 20, and nobody could track of their own children in these institutions, you can be sure that the things that went wrong with the institution that were Catholic institution, most of them were Catholic institutions that were in charge of raising of the red-skinned children, you can be sure none of the things that went wrong over there will go wrong over here, when it has to be, these institutions has to be adopted nationwide and planet-wide. If this happens, you can be sure that the pink-skin politicians, the rich pink-skin, they will do their best to have these institutions be the best, because their own children are part of these institutions. So I have a feeling nothing will go wrong as long as everybody's children have to go in, and nobody can track of their own children. I think nothing can go wrong. These institutions will be the best run institutions in human societies, just because every president that goes into the office, every senator that takes office, every representative, every general, every colonel, they know their children are in these institutions, and since they can't keep their track of them, they do their best to take care of everybody's children, just because they can't pick out their own. You will have, I have a feeling you will have no wars. Because, you know, if a politician thinks his own children are going to be at the, maybe at the front line, if a politician goes into the institution and looks at these young people and thinks he could be my child, he could be my son, he could be my daughter, then he has no choice but to love them all. Imagine, just give you a real world example. Imagine if Dick Cheney's daughter, Miss Liz Cheney, was part of these institutions, and there was a chance she had to end up in the front lines in the war in Iraq. Dick Cheney would not be, you know, so inclined to start a war in Iraq, go to war in Iraq, because, you know, he has two girls, and they both might. He doesn't have. He has lost track of them. There is no way he can track them in the system. So from age 5, the parents give the children to these institutions and no more contact. They have contact with children. These children come out of institution in daily trips around the city, in daily activities around the city, but none can be distinguished from others by the parents. So although children are part of the society, they are not individually recognizable, identifiable. Therefore, George Bush has three children, twin daughters. If he thought, and both of them were at the fighting age, 18, 19, 20, when Iraqi war started. If George Bush knew that his children might, you know, be in the front line, he doesn't know where they are, which institution they are, in what place they are, the parents wouldn't even know what professions have the children chosen, because it's out of their hand. So because it's like that, even though their children may not be in the front line of the war, but because they think they might be in the front line of the war, they will not start wars. This is what I'm trying to say. If high-ranking members of the society have their children mixed in the bag with low-ranking members of the society, and it's a mixed bag, and they cannot distinguish a child from a different child, they will not take society down a shitty road. Simple. There is an added advantage of, you know, then in such a situation you can, if most people are comfortable with the idea of what they say, meritocracy. If you have the merits, if you have the qualification, if you have the skill, if you have the know-how, if you have the wisdom, if you have if you have the merits, if you have the qualities, you take a position and you execute the functions associated with that position. That's meritocracy. Now, this is the best way to bring about perfect meritocracy, in which you're giving every child in these institutions exactly the same head start, exactly the same resources, exactly the same care and patience, based on, years of research. And because it's a mixed bag, the politicians will not, just like the politicians don't have any problem spending money on wars now, at that time, because their own children are in these institutions, and they cannot play favoritism because they can't even, identify their own children. Therefore, believe it or not, these institutions will have the greatest resources available to them to raise the humans generation after generation, much more than what they're spending on wars right now. If you want real change, if you want to stop the wars, if you want to stop war spending, all you have to do is start these institutions and force their politicians to send their children to these institutions. Then you will see that most of human productivity will go towards raising next generations, instead of destroying other people and destroying planet and destroying whatever they can. Another added advantage is this continuation of this meritocracy. Is that the advantage is that you do away with this whole idea of monarchies, and upper echelon of society, and these people who are born upper echelon and they will stay upper echelon, and no matter what they do. And we're talking about the monarchies of Europe, just as well we are talking about capitalist monarchies, such as families with great wealth, Johnson and Johnsons and Trumps and Rupert Murdoch and his children, and all these are monarchies that are created by capitalism, through capitalism. Monarchies that are created specifically through wealth, and you do away with these. You do away with these monarchies by taking their children. By law, they have to leave their children with the institution at age 5. Therefore, these children also will grow up normal, with no, sense of entitlement, they're part of the society, and eventually, in the future, they will perform their function in the society with their positive function. Right now, many of these children at the top, higher echelons of the society in capitalist societies have no function. I mean, they wake up in the morning and they play around and they sleep at night. That's it. That function ends. They function as a pig would. Pig gets up in the morning, eats, and then at night it sleeps. End of story. I mean, you look at these really wealthy families, their children live a vegetative life, live an animalistic life, like a chicken. Wakes up, eats, sleeps. Wakes up, eats, sleeps. That's a chicken's life. Is a life that many of these, wealthy children, extremely wealthy children, have adopted, with no real positive role in the society. And some of them, come up with different ways of making even more money. It's sort of like, what if money had solved your issues, your personality issues, your psychological issues? Well, you don't think you have had enough money in your life that you think your issues will be solved with more money? Just by having more money, you think you're going to be a positive force in the society? Again, a lot of problems, if you really think about it, a lot of social issues that we have, social problems that we have in the society will go away if we adopt this idea of taking children from age 5 and anonymously sending them to these institutions, all the children from the whole planet going to these institutions, and then having the government, each and every member of the government be very interested in the well running of these institutions because their own children are anonymously have been mixed up in those institutions, so everybody will do their best for all these children because they can't identify their own, they can't pick their own, so they will be nice to all of them. I think this is the way out. This is the way out of the wars that we keep creating in our human society on earth. This is the way out of poverty. This is the way out of unproductivity. You see, you have two kinds of unproductivity in society. Two kinds of people are unproductive: those who have been neglected and not given a proper skill within their aptitude to perform a function in the society, have not been given that skill due to lack of resources, and those who have too much resources and they actually don't, whether they have a skill or not, they have, because of too much resources, they actually don't see a need to perform a positive function in the society. So these two kinds of unproductive people will go away. The reality is there are very fewer number at the top of capitalist societies that may have the skills but don't have the need or don't see it necessary to perform the skill because they're already loaded financially. But the majority are at the bottom of the society, that they grow up because of lack of resources, because of lack of care, because of lack of really not being, their aptitude not being well recognized. They become waste for a society because they really never find their place in the society. They go to waste. They don't really find how best they can serve the society. They go to waste. So here's in short, what I'm trying to say is, with the quality control, let's say what is the best quality control? What is the best kind of care system in farming? You see that in farming, if you want to be extremely really care for the plants, you actually bring them indoor. You have these large institutions that come up with farms indoor. So you have these factory farms indoors that they provide artificial lighting for them, and then they actually come up with a regiment of what to feed them. It has come down to a science of molecule per molecule, of so many grams of this has to be applied to each plant. It needs so many grams of this within a week, and so many grams of that chemical, and this chemical, and that chemical. So they have worked it out to such a minute details that at the end of the day, they will get the best result with optimum, with least waste as possible. Now, if we have come up with a system in which that we can produce the best results with exact resources, with the specific exact resources, you can say with no waste, we can produce the best carrots with no waste and the least resources, why can't we strive to go towards a way in which we can create the best human we can with least resources and with no waste? A lot of human productivity is being wasted right now, whether during the process of raising a human being, or after raising a human being and you find out the product that you have produced is not optimal, it's not functional, and you have to send it to prison, you have to send it to the work camp, you have to gather them up as homeless around the streets, you have to lose them into drugs and alcohol and murder and mayhem, or war. It's a fucking wasteful society. We have become so efficient in raising a carrot for these humans, but we have neglected raising the fucking human. So everything else is, we are trying to work out the optimum efficiency in raising everything else, in growing everything else, except the one that these things are meant for. The carrot is meant for the human, and the vegetables are meant for the human, and the chicken and the beef is meant for the human. So they are raised in optimum condition, where we try to have as little waste as possible, in optimum efficiency. But what they're meant for, the human beings, are produced and raised with least care. Leave it to Joe and Jane, who don't have a fucking clue about raising children. Don't have a clue, don't have the knowledge, don't have the patience, don't have nothing that is required to raise a child. Joe and Jane don't have. Average 95% of people in the society don't have a clue, are not qualified to raise children. I guess they can have children, but they're not qualified to raise human beings. 95% of society today on this planet. I can say for myself, as personal experience, myself and everyone I know, everyone I can recall from memory, within the people I met, within the family I've had, within the extended family, within neighbors, within countrymen, within co-workers, everyone I have met in my life, I feel they have been much better human being for themselves as well as for the society if they were raised by an institution. It's an institution that I just described, mixed with other people, other children of their own age, raised by a system in which the higher echelons of the society have to also send their children to the same institutions, and nobody can identify their own children. And they all just, have to grow up together. And the parents, the grown-ups in the society, cannot identify their own specific children in these institutions. Everyone that I know would have had a better life if they were raised by these institutions. Better life for themselves and better functionality now in the society. I can assure you, myself first. I put myself first, that I would have, it would have been better for me and the society around me, for everyone, that if I was raised in an institution, such an institution that I described. And I can assure you, it's the same for my brother, my sister, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my countrymen, my neighbors, everyone. So why not start these institutions? It can be started with a few extremely wealthy people who start such institutions for their own themselves and their own children, and then they start adding, and they make it so that these institutions are so well run that, you know, people want to send their children to these institutions from age 5. And first it can only, later on it can be mandatory, but at first, like Elon Musk is doing it, at first it has to be optional, but it has to be so good that, you know, people would be dying to send their children to these institutions. I think this is the best way. If Jeff Bezos wants to invest, I think he should start these institutions, invest in what Elon Musk has in mind with regards to these institutions. Other wealthy individuals should start investing in these institutions. At first it will be optional, later on it will be mandatory. We're talking in a decade or so, it would be mandatory, and people will, you know, as long as people know their children are, you know, being looked after well, as long as, you know, how many parents do you know that would not be overjoyed if they knew their children are getting the same treatment as Jeff Bezos' children are getting in the same institution, even if that means they would not be able to identify their own children. How many parents, I repeat again, how many parents would you know refuse to send their children to an institution where Elon Musk children are going to, with the catch that we cannot see their children or identify their children, period, after they hand them over to the institution. You have a child, you raise the child till age 5, you hand it off to the institution, you know it's a good institution because your child is going to be, you know, being raised next to, you know, our Cuban children. The only catch is you will not be able to identify your child after that. You just know your child is part of the society and he's getting the best care possible, the best education, the best culture, the best of everything. I don't think you find any parent who will refuse to do that, refuse to send their children, because they just want the best for their children, and if that means they will lose track of them, so be it. In fact, there is an added advantage to that, is that first, they might be inclined to have more children, because all they have to take care of, they only have to take care of the child for 5 years. So if you only have to take care of the child for 5 years before you hand it to the institution, many humans, many couples will have an easier time deciding to have more children, because it's only 5 years. It's a 5-year commitment, having a child, not an 18-year or potentially a lifetime commitment to having children. It's a 5-year commitment. After that, you give it to the institution, you lose track, you cannot identify your child, but you know the child will get the best care possible, optimum. There is another added advantage. Since you cannot, you lose track of your children after age 5, you can have more children, but also you don't see the need for accumulating wealth, because one of the reasons people accumulate wealth is because they feel the more they can accumulate, the better the chances of survival is for their children, because then their children will, you know, inherit a large sum of money, therefore increases their chances of survival. Well, in such a scenario in which, you know, it's meritocracy and your children are handed off to institution, you cannot identify them after age 5, they become part of the society, they become positive force for the society, and they're no longer, you know, on the wings waiting for you to die so they can inherit the wealth. In such a situation, you don't need to accumulate wealth either, because you know after you die, everything you have goes back to the society. If everything you have goes back to the society, if you don't, you know, pick a specific institution that you like your stuff to go to, your wealth to go to, it automatically goes back to, you know, same institutions or the government who gives it to these institutions. Or you can choose where your wealth, which institution your wealth should go to. But the point becomes, there would be no reason for you to have a single dollar or a single cent left after you die, because your society is your family. You don't have a specific family left over. After you die and your wife dies, you don't need to have anything left over. Therefore, this thirst for wealth also goes away. By creating these institutions for children to raise raise the next generations through these institutions after age 5, you cure a lot of ills in the society. You stop wars, you stop this unrestrained wealth accumulation, you stop you stop this crazy situation that we have in the society. You stop waste of resources, waste of human beings, waste of everything. All you have to do is just take the children at age 5 and put them in these institutions. And it doesn't have to be by force. You make these institutions just like Elon Musk is doing with his children and the children of the people of his co-workers. Just make the institutions so good that people are willing to give up their children to these institutions. At no cost, just here, take it. Go raise it well. I don't want to, you know my child. After age 5, I don't mind, losing track of my child after age 5 if I know he or she is going to get the best care possible.